All right, welcome to another installment of Michael's Record Collection. I am joined by Laura Meade, who has a new album coming out on Friday the 21st, and will eventually be joined also by John Galgano. They are probably pretty well known from the band Is, but Laura's got a solo album coming out, and we're going to talk about it this week. And Laura, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So this is the second Laura Meade solo album, but you did have like a couple of singles or like maybe an EP out before that. Is that right?
I had an EP out in '06, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Um, so I wanted to get into like just the germination of this album and how it came about. When did you start to really fully think about this album or recording an album, and then when did you really know what you wanted to say with this album?
This was such an unusual album, born from such an unusual time. Um, we didn't have plans to do another album for me. Maybe 2 years from now, maybe three, because we had a lot set up for Is um, for in 2020, which ended up not happening.
Mhm.
Um, so after the initial depression and I don't want to create anything, I don't want to do anything, that was on my end, especially after that kind of, passed. Um, then it it was such an organic thing. Um, I usually for ReMedium, for my first solo album, I wrote everything. Everything was written before we even stepped foot in any sort of studio.
Mhm.
Um, and so it was just here, we're gonna learn these songs, do these songs. I knew them all by heart, and we're gonna just record it and put it out. And this album, so strange because we didn't go into it with like really any thoughts or any ideas at the beginning of like what it would be. It was just kind of like ideas were flying around John's head, my head, and we just kind of said, let's just give it a shot. Let's just get into the studio and kind of see what comes as we're recording it, as we're doing it. So it all just kind of it appeared as we were doing it, which was totally um, unusual for me. That's never happened before.
Mhm. And you said even that it started out, and the album's called, by the way, "The Most Dangerous Woman in America." It seemed like you started out with one individual in mind, but then it became about everyone or all women that have had their voices silenced. How did that kind of change? Do you remember a certain point when that became clear in your mind that the direction was going to change a little bit?
Yeah, it did start out. The inspiration was specifically one woman's story. Um, and as we were kind of getting into it, we thought, well, let's not do specifically like we're going to tell this person's story because it is so applicable to so many people. Everyone has a story, or everyone knows um, a story of someone who was silenced for speaking their truth, or just completely forgotten by society for no reason. Um, and so we were going along with that thought, and then as we were getting towards the end, it was like, oh, huh, we still want to let people think what they will, because I think that's so beautiful about music in general, that you
Mhm.
can bring yourself to the music. And when someone doesn't tell you this is what it's about, you tell you what it's about. And I think that is amazing. Um, but there is a specificity to it that is definitely a driving force for me and John. Um, and more perhaps will be revealed as we get further along, closer to the release, which is 2 days away.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
All right. Did you learn anything from making Remedium that you took into this album? Like were there things that you look back on the first album and said, "Oh, I wish I'd have done some things differently," or maybe some missteps that you took and had to correct that you said, "Okay, going into this album, we know not to do that," or is it just because you've been doing stuff with Iz for a while that you really already had this down?
There's part of that, especially I think for John. I can't speak for him, but I think that he has more. I don't want to say it's a well-oiled machine, but his experience is just it's kind of seamless.
Hmm.
Um, for me, ReMedium was totally different. Even my EP that I did back in 2006, it's a blur. I don't. I remember doing it, but it just seems like oh six. It was a million years ago. Um, but ReMedium, I did learn from ReMedium that while your music is precious to you and your creations are so, they touch your heart and you hope that they touch someone else's heart, that sometimes you can't be so precious with what you give to the world because you're creating and then you're giving it away. So there's not, there's room sometimes to just be a little too controlling and precious and this is what it has to be and sound like and specifically, but sometimes you gotta just let go
Hmm.
and let it happen.
At some point, it's not yours anymore. It belongs to everyone.
Exactly.
Got it. Um, so you and John co-wrote the album. Was there a certain way that the writing was split up? Was it were the lyrics split by both of you? Was the music split by both of you? Was it one doing one doing the other? How did that go?
Much like the weird way the album kind of came about, um, the collaboration was totally different than anything that we had even done before. As I'd mentioned for ReMedium, it was like, these are my songs, add stuff to it, please. And he did, and it was amazing. And what he contributed to ReMedium just made it was here, and it just brought it here. Um, with the writing of this album, it was the strangest thing. It was just, we'd get into the studio and just go back and forth and just throwing ideas out there. And to the point where we listen back to something, we're like, who wrote that? What was that? I think I wrote that line. I don't know. It was such the dictionary definition of the word collaboration.
Mhm.
Um, so it's almost hard to piece it apart because John wrote lyrics and music, I wrote lyrics and music, and it just kind of came together.
So you've said it here. You've also said it on a short video on the website, but that you want the listeners to come up with their own ideas about what the lyrics mean. But I have to ask you anyway. Who is the most dangerous woman in America? And with a title like that, uh, also, why is so much of this album Franco-centric? There's a lot of French, influence throughout the album.
Who is the most dangerous woman in America? Well, she's the reason this album was created. She is the forgotten woman whose story needs to be told. And we hope we're doing a good job of it. I don't mean to sound cagey or coy, but I don't want to give too much away just
Yeah, you're holding a little something back. I get it. I had to go for the exclusive though.
Hey, you know what? 2 points for trying.
All right. Would you describe this as a traditional concept album or more of a thematic album, something with recurring themes like musical theater type of thing?
I would say it's definitely more thematic. There are beautiful lines that show up and then interweave through other passages. It's yeah, it's definitely yeah. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, thematic. for sure.
Okay. See, the reason I asked the question is, that has an opening track, which is a very, very short mood-setting opening piece on the banks of the Seine. It was like, oh, it reminds me of "Momentary Lapse of Reason" by Pink Floyd. Sort of has that same, watery feel and mood to it. But then it jumps right in. I will say that for Is fans, this doesn't sound like an Is record, but it does have Is-ish moments in it. There's one keyboard flourish that I can't. I couldn't remember. It's on "I Move." It's the exact same sound, but I can't place what song it's from. But it's in it's in the title track, "The Most Dangerous Woman in America." Maybe you know the one I'm talking about.
I can't, I don't know specifically, but I will say there is flair to this album. Um, and that speaks to the contribution of Tom Galgano, who mastered this album for us, or sorry, mixed this album for us. And his additions are just these beautiful little cherries on top of the sundae, because it just, everything he sent back to us was just like, oh my God, yes, of course, of course. It has that little Is hint without being like, that's an Is song. Wow.
Right, right. The keyboard solo in "Burned at the Stake" is one of those really great Izzy moments, and just that's one that just will bring a smile to all Is fans, and probably anybody that listens to the music that maybe are not familiar with your regular band. The decision. Well, let's just go through the players here: Tom Galgano keyboards and production, Brian Corellian on V drums, John on bass. Of course, he co-wrote the album. There's a lot more. This is a lot more electronic sounding record than ReMedium. Was there an effort at updating the sound to something more modern?
I think that sound could definitely be attributed to the restraints that we were under, what we had to work with. We recorded this album throughout 20. So there were restrictions were changing, and we had to kind of just go with what was being handed to us, and work within those parameters. So the electronic part definitely speaks to a more, I don't want to say easier, but a more contained use, rather than like setting up a drum kit and having all of these, live instruments that you love to have, but sometimes if you can't, you find other ways.
Makes sense. Because I was going to ask, is this, Brian's known for being the electronic drummer, when Greg DiMaselli is, the more regular acoustic drummer. And I wondered if that played into Brian being on the album and Greg not, or if it was just availability or that kind of thing.
It's definitely availability. Yeah, and there's no Brems on this album either. Again, availability. We don't live super close to anybody, John and I. So everything takes a trip, and given certain parameters, everything kind of was like, well, can we responsibly socially distance to do this? We have to do it one person at a time. We have to make sure that we are making this fit in to like societal norms and our own time frame.
Right. And everybody's different comfort level with, interacting during this very strange time in our lives.
Completely.
For sure. Yeah, it also seemed on this album like you were more willing to show off the power of your voice rather than how delicate you can sing, where I think ReMedium was a little bit the opposite. Was that intentional, or was that just the way that the songs came about?
It's interesting that you noticed that and mentioned that. Like I mentioned back in the beginning of 2020, it was just you're hit with like, the world's changed, and what does that mean for a performer at all? And where do we go from here? And there was depression, there was what what are we doing and why are we even doing it? And we're not even doing it.
Hmm.
So what do we do? Um, and so for some months, I wasn't singing. I wasn't finding joy in singing because there was nothing really to sing for. Um, and then I found that I kind of came out of it. It was like, no, I sing. That's what I do. I love it. And I found a new voice teacher. I was like, I think I could use like just a little a refresh, just a jump start. And I need a new vocal coach to help me with that. And I found the world's most perfect vocal coach. And thanks to all of this, these Zoom calls and everything, she's in California, and I never would have found her had it not been for the pandemic, because then she opened up her practice and said, well, Zoom calls for anybody. So I do Zoom lessons with her.
Hmm.
And she really helped me to discover just a new part of my voice that I never really even knew, that I was kind of scared of, I never knew was there. I was very comfortable with the musical theater, lyric soprano, light stuff. And I know that. That's where I kind of live. But the lower, stronger singing was completely new to me and frightening, but fantastic to just explore.
Hmm. So you found a way to push your boundaries a little bit. Do you want to give your vocal coach a shout out and give
Yeah,
some props?
Mia Milan, she's just, and she helped me specifically. So we were working on my voice, just finding my own voice again beneath the
Hmm.
layers of like so much. But then once we got to recording specific songs, she would help me work on specific passages from specific songs on the album. So there are just certain parts that were very difficult for me, or I just didn't know how to place it or how to find what it should even really feel like.
Hmm.
And she just, I play her the track, the mix that we had, and she would just hone in on like, maybe try this. And it was like, oh my gosh. So yeah.
Yeah, because I that's one of the things that stood out to me. As I know from your previous work, you do a very good job with the delicate stuff, the ethereal stuff, and here was this, this powerful voice coming out that I it wasn't that I didn't think you could do that. It was just that I hadn't heard it before. So I thought that was an interesting, new wrinkle on your work, and I think that it fits with the music very well. So you went for it. I think you achieved something there, and you sounds like you surprised yourself a little bit.
A little bit.
um, some of these lyrics are just so interesting and so cool. I really like the "Can't find quiet in a quiet place," which recurs from "Burned at the Stake," and it appears later again in the title track, and how you play with that at the end, or that line where it becomes where you go "burned at the stake, burned by mistake." I really I really enjoyed the way that kind of played throughout. Do you remember if that was one of yours or John's?
That was one of John's. That was one of John's. I think that might have been one of the first lyrics that he wrote, the first melodies he wrote. And I think John is a brilliant lyricist, a brilliant composer. Um, but then there are just times where some of the stuff he does hits me, and I'm like, whoa, like that's amazing. And I think I'd mentioned this somewhere else, that the just that kind of obsessive compulsive meditative, like, can't find quiet in the quiet place, quiet place, quiet place. It just kind of keeps, it kind of calls to mania, and it kind of calls to just like I'm looking for it, I can't find it. It's just, I feel like it's so evocative.
Yeah, something that's just out of elusive, just out of your reach. Um, I really like the turn of phrase, "the shape of shock."
Mm.
What does that mean to you?
The shape of shock, to me, it means like the way shock hits you kind of in a, the way it hits you in a visceral way, when it makes you, the shape that you take. Um, I don't know if that was the original intention. That's another John Galgano line, but that's my interpretation of it. And it's a great line. It's great. It's a great line to say too, because the shape of shock for some, I don't know. I think the shock, we don't say that word very much. Maybe we do, but it feels like a little foreign, a little like, oh, it feels shocking.
Yeah, it's an interesting turn of phrase, and it was one of those ones where I read that I was reading the song titles before, I was probably still listening to the first song, "Leaving," which is a really probably one of my favorite tracks on the album. But I'm reading down through the titles of the songs, and I just started to say, "The shape of shock, the shape of shock," and then it's like right there at the up front in the song too, and it's like that's a really cool turn of phrase that I wouldn't have even thought to write that down or something. I was really interested to find out where that came from, but wherever John is right now, maybe he'll
We'll hope he gets here.
yeah, maybe he'll come in and tell us. Um, you mentioned, this dark place that I think everybody went through in 2020 to some extent, where you don't have enjoyment, you don't really feel like you're living, you're kind of holed up in your house. Maybe you go outside, but you try to avoid other people. When did you feel that, or see that light at the end of the tunnel, to where you started to turn the corner and to say, I have to start, I have to keep living. This is 2020, but I have to keep living despite what we're going through, and get back to some kind of, enjoyment in life?
I think for me, it was definitely this. There were days where it was like, okay, we're gonna be okay. This is gonna be all right. And then all of a sudden, for no apparent reason except for that it was what it was, we were where we were. Then it was like, no, it's not gonna be fine. It's never gonna be fine again. Um, and so it was, and I think still remains, this roller coaster of like, we're gonna be okay. This is gonna be just another, I mean, it's gonna be like the hugest thing that happens in my lifetime, but we're going to be all right. To like, this is the worst. I don't see how we're going to, go back to normal.
Hmm.
Which I don't think that's a correct phrase, because I don't think that exists. But there are still days of like, oh, it's good. No, it's not. We'll see. And then creating through that, creating in spite of that, or creating along with that, because there were days where it was like, why would we do this at all? And those are the days like when you do kind of manage to fight through that, and you manage to get to the other side of that, you're like, okay, well, I did that. So I guess I can do other things too.
Yeah, I started with a lot of retail therapy. For me, it was getting on websites and buying box sets and 5.1 surround discs of my favorite bands, and spending a lot of money that was probably not the smartest thing to do. But I needed to, for me, I needed to feel good about something. I needed to have some enjoyment, and I wasn't getting any enjoyment from day to day. So I wanted to bring enjoyment to me, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the outlet that I found. So,
Yeah.
um, like I said, it hit everybody similarly, but everybody kind of reacted in their own way. It was something hopefully nobody will have to go through again for another at least 100 years.
Exactly.
Uh, Tell me about the artwork for the album, the concept of it, and I'm not really sure. Like, there's a picture of you with your, you had changed your look for, for the video, or maybe even before that. I'm not sure, but and then there's these sort of bright lines. I'm not really even sure what they are, if it's just a photography trick or what that is. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so the photo shoot happened first. The photo shoot happened in October.
Hmm.
And then we did the video in January, February, something like that. Um, but the photo shoot happened before we really had an idea. Again, this was all a very oddly out of order album. It was like, let's just get the photos done. Let's just do the photos so that when we are done with the album, we will have them. So there was this kind of, again, this unknowing, like, well, we'll see what kind of comes. Those lines are a photography trick. It is, I think it's called light painting. I might be wrong on this, but
Okay.
it's where you, I know nothing about photography, but something about the shutter speed, and I'm still, but there's light behind me. And when she moved the camera, something about the shutter speed caught trails of the light rather than solitary.
Hmm. And is it just that you liked the photo, or was there a purpose that it represents on the album?
I like the photo, and I think it also it does um, represent a bit of the album. I think as far as when you're talking about a woman who has been silenced and who has been forgotten, to have this visual representation of like not the full face, not just like for ReMedium, it was my face head on, there you go. But this is it's interrupted. It's
Hmm.
a little cut off. And I think that that speaks really well to the whole album.
Do you have a favorite? I know it's like picking your favorite child. Do you have a favorite song on the album?
Oh, it's really difficult. It's very, very difficult because um, they all just bring me such, they all bring me to such a place. They, you know, I have the album right here so I can look at the names of
There
the
you go.
songs so I can remind myself. Because that's the thing too, when you're recording this and you're recording it out of order, and it's like, oh, let's do this song today, let's do that song, let's add a little more here, we have to write a lyric for this part of this song. And when the songs also do have recurring themes for the likes of me, it's like, oh, I thought that was burned at the stake. No, that's the most dangerous woman. Oh, okay. So I still have a hard time keeping it straight. What's in what song? Um, I okay. I was about to say one, and I was like, no, no. I love Shape of Shock. I love Shape of Shock. Um, I love what Tom did on Shape of Shock. Just those beautiful, huge, bombastic sounds that just kind of like jar you, and they're like, whoa, what the heck is that? Like, oh my gosh, the Shape of Shock. What? That I think is amazing. The last song, Tell Me Love, love that song. That was a hard earned song to record vocally. That was one of the more challenging. This was a challenging album to record, as we mentioned before. Um, but that was I think I also had a very hard time because we had recorded everything else and we had one more song to go. And in my mind, I'm like, oh yeah, one more song to go. And I think I had something that was like a wall put up, like, if I don't finish this song, then we're not done recording the album. And I guess I just didn't want to be done recording it because we would go in and I wouldn't be happy. And we'd go in and I wouldn't be happy. And I'm like, okay, I have to stop. I have to stop. We'll come back tomorrow. And it was definitely this kind of emotional block of just not being able to just give it what needed to be given. Um, so that song really, it's they're all close to my heart, but that one really.
It sounds like the making of this was extremely cathartic for you. Is was it the same way for? I know you can't speak for John, but do you feel like it was the same for him?
I think it was. I think it was because unlike me, John is very he he's a go-getter and he does things and he gets stuff done. And if you want something done, you ask John and it will get done. As opposed to me, I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll take care of it later. And maybe it'll get done, maybe it won't get done. And so when we discovered this concept, it was like a fire had been lit in him, and he was like, okay, let's find everything out that we can. Let's write all the time. Like he was on it. He was all about this. And I think it definitely was a part of like, okay, well, this is an insane time and we had a lot of things lined up that are no longer lined up. Let's get shit done. Let's do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What was the first song that you finished?
What was the first song that I finished? I think it was Burned at the Stake. It was either Burned at the Stake or Leaving. Yes. Yeah.
And the last song you just mentioned, you know, you had trouble with that last song, getting it done. What did you close with?
What did I close with?
In terms of the last thing that you finished, you're putting down your last vocal.
Oh, the last line.
Is it, yeah.
The last line was the last line.
Oh man, is there? I know it's still a little bit crazy in the world. Is there a chance that we'll see Laura Meade live shows to support this album?
Definitely, in whatever capacity we can. We're talking to people, and we are trying to figure out what is possible. There's nothing on the books as of yet, but I sense that that's going to change pretty soon, because I am just itching. I'm itching to perform, and I'm itching to perform this. Like, yeah, it's got to happen.
Mm-hmm. And it really deserves its own space, and not as a throw a couple songs into an is set. You know, it really deserves to be out and showcased. Have you already talked to the guys about, you know, they're going to come out and support you live, and, you know, the Galganos and Brian?
We've spoken to just a little kind of like shooting a couple texts here and there, like, okay, what about this? What about that? We're thinking of, because it is such a thematic album, because it is a little theatrical in that sense, that it sort of begs to all be performed as a piece, as soup to nuts. That's the gig right there.
Start to finish, the whole album.
Yep.
All right. Yeah, maybe take the stage during that On the Banks of the Seine plays, and you come out, and yeah, I could see it. Speaking of the guys from Is, what is next for Is?
Is recording. Was recording even before the pandemic. So the pandemic has changed that, obviously, because there's no getting together. There's no, there hadn't been, brainstorming sessions and just kind of like jam sessions and figuring stuff out together. Mm-hmm. But even though that's not happening, there's recording going on behind the scenes. There are definite like steps being made for the next Is album. That's
good to hear. So we'll be on the lookout for that too, as things start to open up a little more. Mm-hmm. Laura, is there a place where fans can buy the album where it is more beneficial to you? In other words, you see a bigger cut if fans buy it from such and such an outlet?
I'm going to say Bandcamp. Bandcamp is a great outlet for us. I'm looking on my CD to see the Bandcamp. It is actually ismusic.bandcamp.com, and the album is in there. So that would be a preferred method, but it's everywhere. It's
Sure, sure.
Apple, Amazon.
As long as they get it. But I like to. I mean, there are people out there like me that I think would like to see the artist get more of it and the large corporation get less of it because
Appreciated.
it is your
Thank
work.
you.
You did a lot more than they did
You
to
wouldn't think so, but yeah, yeah.
to make this happen. Yeah, so that's great. It, did you have fun making this album?
I did. Um, it was, like I mentioned, it was fun. It's always fun writing and recording with John. We have a great time. Um, we're really good collaborators. Um, it was at the same time difficult, and um, when I look back, I wonder how I will look back on the recording years from now, because it's everything we look back on now, 10 years in the future, it'll be, oh, that year, and then the thing that we did, rather than, oh, that thing that we did, and it happened to be in 1999 or whatever. So I do wonder how those will kind of balance out. Like if the Paul of 2020, not to say great things didn't come out of 2020 as well, but 2020 being what it was, will it soften in memory? We'll see.
Yeah, it casts a really big shadow that year will, and with the pandemic and everything else that happened, it was just it was just too much. Just no
Yeah.
more of that. No more of
Yes.
that, please. Oh,
Agreed.
so someone buys your album, they bring it home, put it in the CD player, sit back, relax, listen to it with headphones maybe, or just cranked up really loud. That last song fades out. What do you want the listener to come away with after that experience?
I want the listener to come away with just knowledge of this, just to remember this person. Again, trying not to be super cagey, but there are so many lives, right? Like, there are tons of people, celebrities and regular old Joes that we know nothing about and we'll never know anything about. But when your attention is called to a person's struggle and their story, I hope it resonates. I hope it gives them something to really think about. Maybe Google. Google's your friend. And just honoring a life.
I have to tell you, I Googled the title and it was turning up so many crazy different things.
Typhoid Mary.
That was one. Lizzie Borden was one. And then there was just like a whole line of just famous women
Right.
throughout history. And I was like, it's okay. So let me try to figure this out. So now I'm going, who was known as and it's not helping. It's turning up the same kinds of things. And, you know, I'm sure smarter people than me will have figured this out by now. But, I have had one day, just the French thing just kept throwing, two names, which one of them was Joan of Arc, who never came to America, and the other was Josephine Baker. So these were two names that kind of came up just from the lyrics, just sort of picture in my head kind of thing.
Mm.
And so I, like anybody else, what the lyrics mean to me, there's an initial impression. And then over time that'll change, and then I'll settle into an opinion. I haven't heard it enough to settle into that final formulated opinion, but I think I've heard it about 8 or 9 times start to finish. And it is an intriguing album. And I think Is fans will like it. It's not Is. It's different from Is, but I think there's some DNA shared there. So I think there'll be some things that they can like. Was there anyone that you were listening to that influenced the music side of this album?
I was listening to a lot of Radiohead. It just kind of, when you're in your car driving around, and since we have no CD players in our car anymore, you have to kind of, I do a very archaic thing. I don't, my phone is plugged into my Bluetooth, but I still have to like manually choose what I'm listening to because I don't have fun things to say, play this. So my default was just mix some Radiohead up, please. In addition to, I think it spoke to the weird feelings at the beginning of the pandemic, just like, what am I doing? Who am I? This is ridiculous. So I was listening to a lot of like ambient music, a lot of meditative chanting, mantras. So that intermixed with Radiohead birthed this album.
Okay, fair enough. Anything else you want to tell us about the record before we call it a day? I mean, I know this is represents a lot of work on your part and on John's part, and the other guys from Is that participated. It was a time consuming thing. It came was this was like, I think, what, like 5 or 6 months that it took you guys to put this together.
I think it might have been like 8 or 9 months, something like that, maybe a little less. Yeah.
So there must be some feeling of relief to get it out, but also probably at this point when we're on the eve of it being released, maybe a little concern about how it's going to be, received. I mean, do you have all of that going on right now in your head?
All of it. All of it. There's definitely, I think it speaks to the fact that we've not been performing, we've not been in the public eye as much, and it feels new again all of a sudden. It doesn't feel like, oh, here we go doing another album, cool. So it is definitely, for my part, there's a level of like being seen that I'm not used to, that I'm usually used to. So that feels weird for me to kind of be a little nervous about being seen.
All right. Well, the album, Laura Meade, the most dangerous woman in America. That is not you. You're not the most dangerous woman in America. Oh, there was one other thing I wanted to ask, and I don't know if I need to ask John this, but he's not here.
He's not here. I know. I'm sorry.
That's okay. The Facebook thing. He's repeatedly said he can't name the title of the album on Facebook. What is going on with that?
Good question. It's because we are ruled by the bots, and the bots will pick up the words that they pick up and they will censor you because you've used them. And we don't know for sure because no one will tell us, but I think dangerous and America being used in the same sentence throws up a couple of red flags. And then the song being called Burned at the Stake, also, I don't think they like that, but I think it's more the most dangerous woman in America, that they do not like us and they are trying to shut us down, which I feel like it's horrible because we are trying to promote what we do, but it's also kind of perfect because this is about a woman
being silenced, yeah,
able to get her unable to live her life because of oppression and because of maybe bots trying to censor her Facebook here in 2021.
You can't make it up. It's just a great microcosm of what you're trying to say. So
it really is.
Laura Meade, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Where can people find you? You mentioned your Bandcamp. Where else can people find you online?
You can find me at my website, laurameadmusic.com. I'm also on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, Laura Meade Music. And yeah, those are the places you can find me.
All right. Well, good luck with the album. I know it'll do well. You should be very proud of it. And it was lovely chatting with you about it.
It was a great time. Thank you so much, Michael.